The night was cold on the edge of the human colony. A heavy fog rolled across the landing fields, hiding the broken stars above. People had gathered in silence, their eyes fixed on the strange light in the sky. A damaged refugee ship dragged itself down through the atmosphere, its engines coughing black smoke. The vessel was small, scarred, and old. It looked more like a falling rock than a ship. Sparks showered from its sides as it shook violently. Some colonists gasped, some prayed, and others simply turned away. None of them wanted to believe what was coming down to their world. The ship slammed into the dirt outside the walls with a sharp crack. Dust and fire rose in the air. The ground trembled under the colony's boots. Alarms rang from the towers. Soldiers ran forward but stopped halfway, keeping their rifles raised. No one dared to go closer at first. When the smoke cleared, the crowd saw movement at the broken door of the ship. A small figure stumbled out, coughing. Her skin was pale blue, her body thin. Her clothes were torn and blackened from fire. At first glance, she looked no older than a human child, but her eyes were larger, shining like silver. A murmur spread among the crowd. "Alien," someone whispered. Another voice hissed, "Keep your distance." Fear tightened in the air. Mothers pulled their children back. Men crossed their arms and spat in the dirt. To them, this girl was not a child, but a problem, a danger, a curse. The alien girl staggered forward a few steps. She fell to her knees in the dust, her hands trembled as she reached out weakly, as if asking for help. But no one moved, not a single human stepped toward her. Soldiers lowered their rifles slightly, but did not fire. The silence was heavier than the smoke. "She is dirty," an older man said, loud enough for all to hear. "Refugee trash, you bring her inside and you bring disease with her, do not touch her." His words spread quickly through the crowd like fire through dry grass. Fear turned into disgust, and disgust turned into hatred. The girl looked around, her silver eyes wide. She did not understand their language, but she understood their faces. Every look was sharp. Every whisper was heavy with rejection. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out. She collapsed again, coughing into her hands. The sound was weak, broken, and full of despair. No one helped. Some colonists even laughed nervously. One woman shook her head and muttered, "Let the soldiers deal with her, it is not our problem." Another man said, "If we take her in, more will follow. Do not show mercy. They will only use it against us." The soldiers finally moved forward, but even they hesitated. Their orders were not clear. The leaders of the colony had not decided. Was she a prisoner? A guest? A disease to be quarantined? Until someone higher gave the word, no one wanted the responsibility, so the girl remained there alone in the dirt. The cold night grew colder still. The alien child wrapped her thin arms around herself, shivering. Her lips moved slowly, whispering, something in her own tongue, a prayer maybe, or a cry for her mother. The crowd turned away, pretending not to hear, but one pair of eyes did not turn away. Hidden at the edge of the crowd, a human man watched quietly. He had seen the fear in the colonist's eyes, but he also saw the truth in hers. This was not a monster, not a danger, but a lost child. He clenched his fists, his heart pounding in his chest. The whispers around him grew louder. "She should not be here. She is not one of us. She will only bring trouble." The man lowered his eyes for a moment, thinking, remembering. He remembered nights of hunger when he was young, the feeling of being ignored, the feeling of being invisible. That memory struck him like a blade. The girl coughed again, her voice cracking into the night. Her silver eyes lifted to the sky as if asking the stars for mercy. No answer came, only the sound of soldiers shifting nervously and the crowd muttering. In fear, the man knew if no one moved, she would not survive the night, and still, no one dared to step forward. The outcast. The night grew darker. The ship's broken frame still smoked in the distance, but the people no longer cared about the crash. Their eyes stayed fixed on the alien girl who sat weakly in the dust. She tried to stand again, her knees trembling, but her strength failed her. She fell forward onto her hands, coughing. The colonists whispered louder now. Fear had turned into anger. The crowd that had once been silent now seemed to enjoy its power over her. Children peeked out from behind their parents, pointing. Some laughed, not because they understood, but because fear made them cruel. "She is filthy," muttered a woman, pulling her son back. "Look at her skin, blue as frost. Who knows what disease hides inside her blood?" Another man added, "Refugee ships bring nothing but thieves and plague. She should have burned with the others." The alien girl lifted her head slowly. Her silver eyes shimmered under the colony's harsh lights. She did not understand the words, but she felt the hatred. Each voice was a knife, cutting her already. Broken spirit. She pressed her arms against her chest as though trying to hide, but there was nowhere to run. A soldier finally approached, rifle still ready. He barked something in the human tongue. The girl tilted her head, confused. She answered weakly in her own language, her voice trembling. The soldier stepped back quickly as if her words themselves were poison. "Stay away from her," he warned. The others. "She speaks their tongue," she could be calling more of them. The crowd gasped. Some backed away. Others muttered angrily. The girl looked around in panic, not knowing why her voice had brought fear. She reached a shaking hand forward, as though begging for water or bread, but no one offered. A stone was thrown from the back of the crowd. It struck the dirt beside her. Dust rose, and the girl flinched violently, curling up into herself. "She is not welcome here," shouted a man's voice. "Send her back into the wreck. Let the cold take her." The words were cruel, but no one argued. The colony was a place of rules, order, and survival. There was little space for pity, and so, the alien girl became something less than human in their eyes, an outcast. Minutes turned into hours. The crowd thinned, but not completely. Some stayed only to watch. Others stayed to whisper. The girl did not move. She sat in the dirt with her thin arms wrapped around her knees, rocking slightly. She was too weak to run, too afraid to sleep. A light drizzle began to fall. The colony's lamps reflected off the wet ground. The girl raised her face to the sky, letting the cold rain wash over her burnt clothes and dusty skin. For a moment she almost smiled. The water gave her strength, a reminder that she was still alive. But when she opened her eyes again, she saw nothing but the humans staring back, cold and silent. Inside the colony walls, people spoke of her through the night. Some said she was a spy. Others said she was cursed. A few whispered that she was only a child, but those voices were quickly drowned by fear. "If we take her in, more will follow," the leaders warned. And then what? Another war? Another famine? By dawn, the girl had not moved from her place near the wreck. Her lips were dry, her body shaking from cold. Her large eyes scanned every face that passed, searching for kindness. She found none. Mothers pulled, their children away. Fathers glared as though her presence alone threatened their safety. A group of young men approached her in the early light. They carried sticks. One smirked. "Look at her. Can't even stand. She's weaker than a dog." Another nudged her shoulder with the end of his stick. The girl whimpered softly, trying to crawl away, but they circled her, laughing. "Careful," warned a soldier watching from a distance. But he did not intervene. The colony had already decided she was not their problem. If she suffered, it was her own fault for being born alien. The boys grew bolder. One tossed a small stone at her head. It struck her temple, and she cried out in pain. They laughed harder. "See? Even her tears are strange." The girl curled into a ball, her arms covering her head. Her small body shook, but she did not fight back. She had no strength left to resist. At that moment, something in the air shifted. The man who had watched silently the night before was still there. His heart burned at the sight. He wanted to step forward to shout, but his legs stayed frozen. The weight of the crowd's hatred was heavy, and yet, deep inside, he knew this could not last. The girl finally collapsed completely, her body falling sideways into the mud, her eyes half closed, her breath shallow. The crowd grew quiet again. The boys stepped back nervously as if they had gone too far. Someone whispered, "She will die soon. Best for all of us." But the man watching clenched his fists. He could not accept those words. He remembered his own hunger, his own nights of cold, the memory of being abandoned when he was young. He remembered the ache of needing someone, anyone, to show mercy. He saw all of that now in her fragile frame, the morning sun rose over the colony. Its light revealed more than just the broken ship. It revealed the broken heart of a child who had lost everything. And while the colony turned its back, one man's mind was already beginning to change. For in her weakness, in her suffering, he saw not a monster, not a spy, not a danger, but a mirror of his own humanity. The choice. The sun had climbed higher, but its light brought no warmth. The air around the colony was heavy with silence, broken only by the hiss of smoke still rising from the wrecked alien ship. People came and went, glancing at the small figure. Lying weak in the mud, some stared with curiosity, others with disgust, but none stopped. None helped. The alien girl's breathing was shallow. Her thin chest rose and fell like a flickering flame ready to die out. Her eyes were half closed, silver fading into gray. She no longer reached out, no longer begged. It was as if she had already accepted the truth. No one would come. And yet, one man still stood at the edge of the crowd. His name was hidden from most, for he was not an important figure, not a leader, not a soldier, just an ordinary colonist who had worked in the mines and fields. He was quiet, unnoticed, the kind of man who blended into the background. But inside him, a storm raged. He watched her trembling form, his jaw tight. His thoughts screamed, someone must do something. But when his eyes turned to the people around him, all he saw was fear, a fear so strong it poisoned their kindness. They whispered, "She is alien. She is dirty. She is dangerous." And he knew, if he stepped forward, he would not only face her pain, he would face them. He closed his eyes for a moment. Memories clawed their way back from the corners of his mind. Memories of himself as a child, hungry, abandoned in the dark streets of another colony long ago. He had begged for food once, just as she begged now. He had felt the sting of rejection when people walked past as though he was invisible. He remembered, lying on cold stone, praying someone would care. And he remembered the night when no one came. That memory had shaped him, carved him into the man he was now. He had survived, yes, but at a cost. His heart had carried that scar ever since. And as he looked at the alien girl, her weakness, her silence, her hopelessness, it was like looking at a mirror of his younger self. A whisper reached him from the crowd. "Leave her. She will not last the day." Another voice added, "Better, for all of us, if she dies quietly. No risk, no trouble." The man's fists clenched. His chest ached as if the words themselves were daggers. He turned his eyes back to the girl. Her small hands curled into the mud, and he felt something inside him break. He took one step forward. The sound of his boot crunching the dirt drew gasps from those nearby. The whispers stopped for a moment. All eyes turned to him. A soldier frowned, lifting his rifle slightly. "Stay back," the soldier warned. "Do not interfere." But the man did not stop. His steps were slow, heavy with the weight of decision. His heart pounded like thunder in his chest. His mind shouted warnings. "You are risking everything. You will be cast out. You will be shamed." But his soul whispered back, "If not you, then who? If not now, then when?" The girl lifted her head weakly. Her silver eyes met his. For the first time since her arrival, there was a flicker of light in them, a tiny spark of hope. He froze, that look striking him harder than any weapon. He had seen many things in his life, anger, hatred, fear, but that look of desperate hope was rare, fragile, and unbearable to ignore. The soldier stepped forward, blocking his path. "You do not understand the danger," the soldier said. "She could be carrying sickness. She could be a trap." The man shook his head, his voice low but firm. "She is a child. Look at her. Does she look like a threat to you?" The soldier hesitated, glancing at the girl. His grip on the rifle loosened slightly, but his duty held him still. The crowd behind them began to murmur again, louder this time. "Fool!" someone spat. "You will bring death to us all." Another shouted, "If you touch her, do not expect our help when she kills you in your sleep." The man turned to face them, his eyes burning. He wanted to speak, to shout at their cowardice, but no words came. Only anger, only shame. For them and for himself, for waiting this long. Slowly, he knelt beside the alien girl, ignoring the gasps, ignoring the whispers, ignoring the fear pressing in from every side. The girl flinched as his hand reached toward her. She expected a blow, expected more cruelty, but instead, his hand was gentle. He touched her shoulder lightly, his palm warm against her cold skin. She blinked, confused, uncertain. Her lips parted, as if to speak, but no sound came. "I will not leave you," he whispered, though she could not understand his words. Still, she seemed to feel them. Her trembling slowed, her breathing steadied just slightly. She looked at him not with fear, but with fragile trust. The crowd erupted, voices rose in anger, madness. One shouted, "He is cursed now." Another cried, "He chooses an alien over his own people." The noise grew like a storm, but the man did not rise, did not back away. He stayed there beside her, the first human to break the wall of fear. Inside, his heart, the choice was made. He had chosen compassion over safety, humanity over fear. He knew the cost would come. The colony would not forgive easily. But as the girl leaned weakly against him, as her silver eyes closed in exhaustion, he also knew this truth. If he walked away now, he would never forgive himself. The soldier lowered his rifle at last, shaking his head. "You are a fool," he muttered. But there was no hatred in his tone, only something else, something like doubt. For the first time, even the soldier wondered if perhaps the man was right. The man lifted the alien girl gently into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, fragile as glass. He could feel the heat of fever in her skin, the sharp bones beneath her burned clothing. She made a soft sound, not of fear, but of relief, as though she had finally found shelter. The crowd watched in stunned silence as he carried her. Each step he took felt heavier, not because of her weight, but because of the eyes burning into his back. He was walking against more than just gravity. He was walking against his people, against their fear, against their hatred. And still, he did not stop, for the choice had been made. And once a choice like this is made, there is no turning back. The risk, the man carried the alien girl in his arms, step after step, his boots sinking into the wet dirt. The colony gates loomed ahead, tall and cold, guarded by steel and men with rifles. The people followed him like shadows, their whispers rising like a swarm of insects. Each word carried fear, anger, and disbelief. "He has lost his mind," one woman hissed. "He dares to touch that thing," spat another. Children clung to their parents, eyes wide with both fear and curiosity. They had never seen a human carry an alien, not with kindness, not with care. The girl's head rested weakly against the man's chest. Her skin burned with fever, her breath shallow and uneven. She did not fight. She did not fear him now. For the first time since she crawled out of the broken ship, she allowed herself to close her eyes. A faint trust flickered in her fragile body. But the crowd did not see a child in his arms. They saw a risk, a danger, a threat that could spread like fire, and in their fear, anger grew. The guards at the gate stepped forward, rifles raised. "Stop there," one barked. His voice was hard and sharp, cutting through the noise of the crowd. The man halted, his heart pounding. The girl stirred weakly at the sudden command, but he held her close, steady. "She needs help," he said firmly. His voice was not loud, but it carried. "She is sick. She will die without care." The guards exchanged glances, unease flickering in their eyes. Behind them, the heavy gates of the colony were closed. Their orders were clear. No alien crosses, not without command. The taller guard raised his hand. "Put her down," he said coldly. "She cannot come inside. She is not one of us." The man shook his head. She is a child, he replied. A child is not the enemy. The crowd erupted at once, voices clashing like thunder. Send her back. Kill it before it spreads disease. He is betraying us all. The man's jaw tightened. He looked at the people he had lived beside for years, neighbors and friends, but now their faces were twisted by fear. He saw no kindness, only suspicion. Their fear had made them cruel, and their cruelty was louder than reason. The girl whimpered softly in his arms as though the hatred in the air was pressing against her skin. He lowered his head to whisper gently, "Do not fear. I will not let them harm you." She could not understand the words, but she seemed to sense their meaning. Her small hand clutched weakly at his coat. The colony leader arrived then, a stern woman with gray hair tied back tightly. She wore a long coat marked with the seal of the council. Her eyes were sharp, her steps heavy with authority. The crowd parted as she approached, their whispers falling into silence. All waited. For her judgment, she stopped a few feet away, her gaze fixed on the girl in his arms, her lips pressed into a thin line. "What is this madness?" she asked coldly. Her voice carried the weight of command. "You bring an alien child to our gates as though she is your kin." The man held his ground. "She is no threat," he said. "She is alone, she is sick, she has nothing but fear." The leader's eyes narrowed. "Fear?" She repeated. "Do you know what fear is? Fear is what we feel when ships like hers come to our worlds, bringing war, bringing hunger, bringing ruin. Fear is what we carry in our bones from the last invasion. You would risk all of us for this?" The man's heart pounded, but he did not waver. "I would risk myself," he said. "But if we let a child die in the mud, what does that make us? Are we still human, or have we become worse than the monsters we fear?" The leader's face hardened, but the crowd stirred uneasily. His words cut into them, piercing the wall of fear. Some lowered their eyes, shame burning beneath their skin, but others grew angrier, unwilling to let compassion weaken their walls. "She carries disease," shouted one voice. "She will bring more of her kind," cried another. The noise rose again, a storm of division. The leader raised her hand, and silence fell once more. She looked at the man long and hard, as though weighing not only his words but his soul. "You understand the risk," she said, finally. "If you take her in, you take her alone. The council will not protect you. The people will not stand with you. You will be cut off. If sickness spreads, if danger follows, it will be on your head. Do you accept this?" The man's breath caught. He looked down at the girl, her silver eyes half open, searching his face as though she could sense the decision. He remembered the night before, when no one had come for him as a child, when he had begged in the dark and received nothing but silence. He would not let that silence take her too, "I accept," he said. His voice was steady, unshaken. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some muttered curses, others shook their heads. The leader studied him for a long moment, then stepped back. "So be it," she said coldly. "But know this. You have chosen her over us, and one day, you will answer for it." The gates creaked open slightly, just wide enough for a man to pass. The guards stepped aside reluctantly, their eyes sharp, their fingers tight on their rifles. The man walked forward, the girl cradled against him. Each step was heavy, the air thick with disapproval. The crowd watched in silence as he passed. Some spat at his feet, some turned away, a few watched with unreadable eyes, but none stepped forward to join him. He was alone, utterly alone, except for the fragile life in his arms. As he crossed the gate, the iron doors clanged shut behind him. The sound echoed like a final judgment. He had entered not only with the girl, but also with the weight of every risk, every consequence. The girl stirred faintly, whispering a soft sound in her alien tongue. Her voice was weak, but it carried gratitude, though he could not understand the words. He looked down at her, and for the first time in years, he felt something stronger than fear. He felt purpose, but purpose was dangerous in a world ruled by fear, and though he had crossed the gates, his trials had only just begun. The humanity. The gates clanged shut behind him, their echo rolling through the colony streets like thunder. The man paused, holding the alien girl tighter in his arms. The air inside was no different than outside, still heavy, still cold. But he felt the weight of every eye watching him from behind windows and doorways. They had seen, they had judged. And though the gates had opened for him, he knew most doors would remain closed. He walked quickly, head lowered. His boots struck against stone streets that felt harsher than before. Whispers followed him through the alleys. Shutters closed as he passed. Some voices hissed curses. Others muttered prayers. To them, he was now dangerous, tainted, but he did not stop. He could not. The girl in his arms was light as air, too light for a living being. Her body burned with fever, her breath shallow against his chest. Every step was a race against time. If he faltered, she would not survive. At last, he reached his small home at the edge of the colony, a place simple and forgotten, a single room built of old steel and stone. It had never felt like much to him before, just shelter from the storms. But now, as he pushed the door open and carried the girl inside, it became something more. It became sanctuary. He laid her gently on a thin cot. Her body sank into the worn blanket as though the weight of the world had been lifted from her. She blinked, silver eyes dull with exhaustion. Her lips parted slightly, whispering something in her own tongue. The sound was soft, weak, but it carried the shape of thanks even if he did not understand. The man crouched beside her, his chest tight. He reached out slowly, brushing damp strands of hair from her face. Her skin was clammy, marked with dirt and ash from the wreck. She shivered, curling into herself. For a moment he saw again the child he once had been. Cold, unwanted, unseen. And that memory burned away the last of his hesitation. "You are safe now," he murmured, though she could not understand. Still his tone carried meaning, and she seemed to hear it in her heart. Her trembling eased, her eyes fluttered shut. But he could not let her rest yet. Her body was weak. Her clothes were torn and soaked with grime. She needed warmth. She needed care. He stood, moving quickly, filling a small basin with water, lighting the heating coil until steam rose into the air. The tiny room filled with the smell of iron and smoke, but also with promise. The promise of warmth. When he returned to her side, she stirred faintly, her eyes opening again, confusion flickering in them. He spoke softly, showing her the basin, dipping his hands in the warm water. He mimed washing, his movements gentle, careful. Her eyes followed his hands, her brow furrowing as though she did not understand at first. Then slowly, hesitantly, she nodded. He helped her sit up, his hands steady beneath her fragile arms. She was light as a feather, her bones pressing against his palms. With a cloth dipped in the warm water, he began to wipe away the dirt and ash. The water darkened quickly, the grime of fire and fear melting away. Beneath it, her skin gleamed pale blue, smooth, almost luminous under the dim light. She shivered, at first unused to the touch, unused to kindness. Her body tensed as though expecting pain. But as the warmth spread over her skin, she relaxed little by little. Her breathing deepened, her silver eyes softened. For the first time since her arrival, she looked less like a creature of pity and more like a child, simply a child. The man worked carefully, patient. Each pass of the cloth was a silent promise. You are not alone. You are not unwanted. She watched him with wide eyes, still unsure, still fragile, but the distrust was fading, replaced by something smaller, something fragile but real. Trust. When the basin grew dark, he emptied it, refilled it, and continued. Her hair, tangled and burnt at the ends, softened under the water. He combed his fingers through it gently, untangling knots. She leaned into the touch without realizing, like a child starved of comfort. And though she did not smile, there was peace in her silence. After the washing, he found an old blanket, wrapping it around her small body. The cloth was rough, worn by years of use. But to her it must have felt like silk. She pulled it close, closing her eyes for a moment as warmth wrapped around her. A faint sound escaped her lips, half a sigh, half a sob. but it carried relief. The man's chest tightened. He turned away for a moment, hiding the emotion. Rising in him, he had not felt this kind of purpose in years, not since his youth. When he looked back, he saw her watching him. Her silver eyes clearer now, glowing faintly even in the dim room. She tilted her head, studying him, and whispered again in her language. A sound he did not understand but felt. Deep in his bones, he rose then, preparing food. His cupboards were nearly empty. He had never been a wealthy man. But he found bread, a small piece of dried meat and water. He placed them before her carefully, breaking the bread into small pieces, showing her by eating one first. She hesitated, staring at the food. Her thin hands trembled as she reached out. She sniffed the bread cautiously, then took a small bite. Her eyes widened, as though the simple taste was a miracle. She ate slowly at first, then faster, hunger overcoming fear. Tears welled in her silver eyes as she ate, dripping silently down her cheeks. For so long she had been empty, unwanted, starved, and now, here in this forgotten room, she was fed. The man sat quietly beside her, letting her eat. He did not rush her, did not question her. He only watched, his thoughts heavy. He knew the colony would not forgive him easily. He knew whispers would spread, threats might come. But as he watched her eat, as he watched color return faintly to her cheeks, he knew one truth. It had been worth it. When at last her hunger eased, she leaned back against the cot, her eyelids heavy. She pulled the blanket close again, her small body curling into warmth. She looked at him one last time before sleep claimed her. Her silver eyes softened with something almost human. Trust, gratitude, maybe even hope. The man sat in silence. Long after her breathing deepened, his home, once so empty, now felt alive. The risk had been great, the cost still unknown. But for the first time in years, he felt human again. He felt the weight of his choice, but also the strength of it. Outside, the colony still whispered, still judged. But inside this small room, a different story was being written. A story not of fear, but of compassion. And as the alien child slept wrapped in his blanket, safe for the first time since her arrival, the man knew this was only the beginning. The warning. The morning sun crept across the colony roofs, but inside the man's small home, time felt still. The alien girl slept soundly on the cot, wrapped in the rough blanket, her chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. She looked smaller now, fragile but peaceful, as if the storm outside could no longer touch her. The man sat near the door, his back against the wall, watching her. He had not slept. His eyes were heavy, but his mind was sharper than ever. He knew the colony would not remain silent. Not after what he had done, not after defying them all, and he was right. By midday the knock came, a heavy, deliberate knock on the metal door, not of a neighbor or a friend, but of authority. The man stood slowly, his hand brushing the hilt of the old knife at his belt, not as a weapon but as habit. He opened the door, and there they were, the council's envoys, 3 soldiers in dark coats, rifles slung across. Their backs behind them stood the colony leader herself, the gray-haired woman with eyes like stone. Her face was as cold as yesterday, but sharper now, like a blade drawn from its sheath. The soldiers shifted uneasily, as if even they felt the weight of her presence. "You knew this would come," she said without greeting. Her voice was low, steady. "You chose to bring her here against warning, against reason, and now you will face the cost." The man did not step aside. He blocked the doorway with his body. "She is resting," he said. "She is no danger to you." The leader's eyes narrowed. "No danger?" she repeated. "Do you think danger must come with claws and fire? Sometimes it comes in silence. Sometimes it comes in the form of pity, spreading weakness among our people. You have planted it already." He held her gaze, his voice firm. "She is a child, weak, alone, sick. She asked for nothing but mercy. Is that what you fear? Mercy?" The leader stepped closer, her boots crunching on the dirt outside his door. Her soldiers tightened their grips on their rifles, though she had not spoken a command. "Do not twist words with me," she said. "We remember the last time we showed mercy, do you? Do you remember the bodies buried in ash when their fleets came? Do you remember the screams, the hunger? You would open the gates again with your softness. The man's jaw clenched. He remembered. Yes. He had lived through those days too. He had seen war, seen hunger, seen cruelty. But he also knew one truth the leader could not wash away. This child had not brought war. She had only brought fear. And fear belonged to them, not to her. She is not her people, he said quietly. She is one soul, one life. If we judge her by the sins of others, then we are no better than the monsters we fear. The leaders' eyes flashed, a storm behind stone. For a moment silence pressed heavy between them. The soldiers shifted, uneasy. The colony beyond the walls seemed to hold its breath. Then she spoke again, colder than before. You have until nightfall, she said. By then she must be gone from this place. Leave her outside the gates where she belongs. If not, we will come back and we will not ask again. The man's chest tightened. He wanted to shout, to fight, but he knew it would change nothing. The council's word was law. To defy it was to put not only himself, but the girl in even greater danger. Still he stood his ground. She will not leave, he said. His voice was steady, not loud but solid. Not while she breathes, not while I draw breath. If you come for her, you will pass through me. The soldiers froze at his words, glancing at one another. They had expected fear, not defiance. The leader's lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes burning with something more dangerous than anger. Certainty. Then you choose death with her, she said, turning sharply. Her coat flared behind her as she walked away. The soldiers followed, though their steps were slower. Their eyes lingered on the man, some with scorn, some with doubt, perhaps even with pity. When the door closed, silence returned, but it was not peace. It was the silence before a storm. The man leaned against the door, his chest rising and falling heavily. He had made his stand. He had spoken his choice, but the weight of it pressed on him now more than ever. They would return, they would not bluff. And when they did, he would be outnumbered, outmatched. He turned back to the room. The girl had stirred. Her silver eyes blinked open, confused by the voices she had heard. She sat up weakly, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. She looked at him with a questioning gaze, her head tilted slightly. He forced a small smile, kneeling beside her. He placed a hand over his heart and said softly, "Safe," repeating the word, pointing to her, then to himself. Safe. She did not understand the language, but she seemed to catch the meaning. Her lips curved into the faintest of smiles before she sank back onto the cot. The man sat beside her until her breathing steadied again. But his mind was far from calm. The warning echoed in his ears. Until nightfall, the sun already moved across the sky. Shadows stretched longer. The clock was ticking. He stood, pacing the small room. His thoughts spun like a storm. Could he run? Could he hide her beyond the colony walls? The wilderness outside was harsh, filled with beasts and dangers. She would not survive long out there, not in her state. No, that was not an option. Could he fight? He looked at his old knife, worn and dull, and shook his head. One man against the council soldiers. It would be a slaughter, but still he could not obey. He would not place her back into the mud, not after seeing her eyes, not after hearing her whispers of trust. The colony could call it weakness, but to him it was strength. Strength to stand when no one else would. The hours crept by. Each tick of time felt heavier. Outside he could hear the whispers of neighbors, some condemning him, others merely curious. A few voices carried pity, but none offered help. He was truly alone in this choice, alone but for the child resting in his home. As the sky turned gold with the setting sun, he prepared. He gathered what little food he had, filled a flask with water, placed them in a small pack. He did not know what the night would bring, but he knew he would not face it unready. The girl woke again, watching him with tired but curious eyes. He crouched beside her, showing her the pack, miming eating and drinking. She nodded faintly, though she did not fully understand. Her small hand reached out and touched his arm. Her silver eyes glimmered softly as if telling him, "I trust you." He covered her hand with his own, his chest tightening. He whispered, "I will protect you," though she did not know the words. Yet she smiled faintly, as if she had heard them anyway. Outside, the colony bell tolled, a deep sound that marked the end of day. The warning was over, the time had come, and with it, so did the storm. The message, the bell's echo, still rolled across the colony streets when the soldiers returned. Their boots struck the stone like hammers, a steady drum of authority. Behind them walked the leader again, her gray hair sharp against the dying light of the sun. Her eyes burned colder than before. The warning was over, and now came judgment. The man stood in the doorway of his small home, the alien girl behind him on the cot, wrapped in her blanket. Her silver eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, wide with fear but steady on him. She did not cry out. She did not move. She trusted him, and the trust was heavier than any weapon he could carry. The leader raised her hand and the soldiers stopped. Their rifles gleamed, pointed just low enough to remind him of the choice. The crowd gathered again, filling the street, faces lit by torches, shadows long across the walls. Fear and anger twisted them, but beneath it something else stirred. Curiosity, doubt. The leader spoke, her voice carrying across the silence. "We gave you time. We gave you warning. Yet still you defy us for what? For this creature? For this danger?" She pointed toward the girl with sharp disdain. Her words cut the air like knives. The man's hands tightened at his sides. His chest rose and fell heavily. His voice came, not loud, but clear, steady. "For a child?" A ripple moved through the crowd, whispers sparking. The leader's lips thinned. "A child?" She snapped. "Do you call her that? She is alien, she is filth, she is the shadow of those who burned our worlds. You insult our dead by naming her innocent." The man stepped forward, not away from them but toward them. His eyes blazed, though his body trembled. "I insult the dead more by becoming like their killers," he said. His words cut into the silence, heavier than steel. "If we turn our backs on the helpless, if we let children die in the mud, then we are no different than the monsters we hate." The soldiers shifted, uncertain. Their fingers tightened on triggers, but they did not fire. The crowd's whispers grew louder now. Some nodded faintly, shame flickering across their faces. Others scowled, clinging to fear. The leader's jaw hardened. "You speak of mercy," she said, "but mercy kills. Mercy opens the door for betrayal. You would risk every life in this colony for one?" The man shook his head. "Not for one," he said, turning to glance back at the girl, then back at the crowd. "For all of us. For what makes us human? If we throw away compassion, then we are already dead. We become nothing but machines of fear, empty and cruel." The crowd stirred, louder now, voices clashed. "He is right," whispered one woman. "She is only a child." "No," shouted a man. "This is how it begins. This is how they destroy us again." The street filled with the storm of division, fear against compassion, hatred against hope. The leader raised her hand, but even her command could not silence them fully. She stepped closer to the man, her eyes narrowing like a blade. "Do you think your words are stronger than fear?" she hissed. The man's chest ached, but his voice rose louder than before, carried by something greater than himself. "Yes," he said, "because fear dies with us, but mercy lives beyond us. Fear destroys, mercy builds. Fear makes us cowards, mercy makes us human." The words hung in the air like fire. The crowd fell quiet, not fully silenced but shaken. Some lowered their heads, ashamed. Some stared at him with wide eyes, as if seeing him for the first time. Behind him, the alien girl made a sound, small but clear. Her silver eyes glistened with tears. She whispered something in her own language, a soft, trembling word. She did not know his tongue, but the sound carried hope. It was not human speech, yet it reached every heart in the street. The man turned slightly, holding out a hand to her. She hesitated, then slid from the cot, her blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. Her small hand found his, trembling but brave. She stood beside him, looking at the crowd, not with hate, not with anger, but with quiet trust. And that image, one man, one alien child, hand in hand, struck deeper than any speech. The leader's eyes flickered for the first time, showing something other than stone, a shadow of doubt, a shadow of memory. She had lived through wars, yes, but she had also once been a mother. She had once held her own child's hand like that long ago, before the world turned to ash. She looked at the girl, then at the man, and though her lips stayed firm, her voice wavered slightly when she spoke. "If you keep her," she said, "her life and yours are your burden. If danger follows, the blood will be on your hands alone." The man nodded, his voice steady. "I accept it." The soldiers lowered their rifles slowly, uncertain now. The crowd murmured, some still angry, but others softer. The storm of hate had not vanished, but cracks had formed, cracks where light could slip in. The leader turned sharply, her coat swirling behind her. "So be it," she said. Her voice was iron again. "But remember this night, remember what you have chosen." With that, she strode away, the soldiers following reluctantly. The crowd scattered slowly, whispers trailing like smoke. The man stood there, breathing heavily, the girl's hand still in his. She looked up at him, her silver eyes wide, and for the first time she smiled. It was faint, trembling, but real. A smile not of safety, not of victory, but of hope. He knelt beside her, placing a hand gently over her heart. "You are not alone," he whispered. She tilted her head, not knowing the words but understanding the feeling. She pressed her small hand over his in answer, and in that moment, the message was clear, not just for him, not just for her, but for all who had seen. Humanity was not in walls, not in weapons, not in fear. Humanity was in kindness, humanity was in mercy, humanity was in the choice to see a child, not a threat. The colony would not change overnight. The whispers would not vanish. The risks would not disappear. But something had shifted. A seed had been planted, and in time, seeds could grow. That night, as the stars burned above, the man sat by the cot once more. The alien girl slept peacefully at last, her small hand curled around his sleeve. Outside, the colony dreamed its restless dreams, but inside his small home, there was peace. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one truth had been written in fire and memory. In the darkest places, humanity shines brightest, and sometimes all it takes is one choice, one act of courage, one hand extended in mercy, to change everything.